Okay, Grace and Truth, let's have some fun. This is going to be fun for about 20 of you, I guess, but but this is a video by request. What we're going to do is a tour of my Bible shelf. So if you're a Bible nerd, then get excited, because I'm about to take you through what I got. If you're not a Bible nerd and you want to tune out of this video, your growth in Christ will not be hurt at all. But a while ago, I did a tour of my bookshelf and put that video out. And after that, I got plenty of requests like, hey, show us just your Bible shelf. Like, what's there? We don't need all the rest of the library again, but just what kind of Bibles do you have? Because this is really interesting for those of us that spend a lot of our time with our nose in the book. So I'll give you a tour through what I got. We won't spend a ton of time on all of it, but hopefully you can see some features of different Bibles that would be attractive to you, and you could be like, oh man, yeah, I want a Bible that does that, or that's set up that way, or whatever the case may be. I don't have all the translations here that I use because some of them are on the computer on my software. So these are just the hard copy Bibles. I'm not going to run you through the program. The beginning of the matter here. This is my Bible. This is my baby. We have, me and the Lord have planted churches with this Bible. We've led people to Christ with this Bible more than any other in my hands. And I got this in 5th grade, and I've duct taped the spine a couple of times, so it's wearing out on me because it's not real leather. It was actually a pretty cheap Bible, but I actually got saved while reading this Bible. So this is this is the primary spot in my spiritual life as far as a hard book. If I could go on an island and have no other book for comfort, I would pick this one hands down. So this is just a New American Standard, 1995 edition, dual column, center column cross references, nice clear type font, dark ink against bright white paper, so that sharp relief there. And this thing just fits my hands. If I do this, it opens to Romans 8 because I spent a lot of time there. If I do it again, it opens to 1 John, and then it'll go to, I was going to say Titus, but yeah, Titus right there, because that was the first book I ever preached through at Grace and Truth. And I had this Bible. I had to get another one because this one was wearing out on me. You can see the binding there is in some rough shape, and I've had to do some re-gluing on some of that. So this is my baby. When this thing starts falling apart on me, my plan is to put it in a vacuum pack and pass it down to my kids and say, if you ever open this and you let the air, the oxygen hit this Bible, I will come back from the dead and find you. Don't let that happen. So that's that one. This one is the one you guys see on Sundays. This is my my go-to preaching Bible. It is a Cambridge, there you go, Cambridge wide margin, New American Standard, and you can see that it's my preaching Bible because, it's all marked up and whatnot. So this is Luke because I'm in Luke right now. If we go to, like Daniel, then you'll see all of the markups in Daniel. So this is the one that you'll typically see in my hands on a Sunday morning because normally I'm preaching out of the NASB. Occasionally I'm preaching out of the ESV, and this Bible is great. This is calf skin, and this is what's called an Allen Bible. I really recommend these Allen Bibles. They're not cheap, but they last you forever, and the idea is that you can pass it down to the next generations. It used to be that you would get one Bible, and that was kind of that generation's Bible in your home, and you'd have to pass that down to your kids. And so they don't make them with that high quality very much anymore. But these Allen Bibles, they went back to that old style of sewing the pages in and the high quality leather and so on. They also did this cool thing where you see around the edges, it's got some extra leather, right? So that is to protect the pages. So it kind of curls around the pages and almost encloses around them for travel so that the pages get protected by the leather. This goat skin is just soft, man. I love that stuff. I want a pillow and a blanket made out of this stuff. So the ESV Allen Bible, they put out Bibles in all sorts of translations, but that one is the ESV. As far as more just straight translations, I got the giveaway paper Bible here. You can pick up one of these out in the foyer. Very small print, not super easy on the eyes, but we got 400 of them for $400. So, what do you do? It was dirt cheap. Here's another New American Standard. I'm just cruising through some of the ones I don't use quite as much. Another New American Standard Bible, a smaller edition. And this one, somebody left in my office, and I never figured out who. So it's still on my shelf. I like the font on this one, though. That's particularly easy to read. I don't know what that font is called, but it's got the serifs on it and everything, just nice and clear. So, good old New American Standard. This is the Tanakh, which is basically the Old Testament, right? So Tanakh is a Hebrew acronym. See if I can get the light off of that. And it's Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, which is the law, the prophets, and the writings. So in the end, you wind up with the whole Old Testament. And this is a translation of the Jewish Publication Society. So basically, an English translation from Orthodox Jews of the Old Testament. Sometimes it's interesting to see how they've translated things a little differently, because they've got, they don't recognize Christ, and so they've got some different theology in some of these passages. So they'll render different translations. So Hebrew into English, Tanakh. This right here is my old school RSV, Revised Standard Version. Back in the day, you would think that everybody was using King James, but not quite everybody was. The other one that was the main competitor to King James was the RSV, the Revised Standard Version. Excuse me. A very good translation of the Bible. Here what we've got is a ESV, a very small one. This is a compact size. And I keep this in the glove compartment of my truck so that I'm never without a Bible if I'm doing a hospital visit, or if I run into somebody and I'm sharing the gospel with them and I want to show them something from the Bible. So this is my the one that I keep with me in the truck so that I'm never without a Bible, because you never know what situation you're going to get into. This is my first ESV. It's a thin line, nice and thin, pretty durable, and I've still got it because I don't know why. I don't use it very much anymore because I got the Allen Bible. This guy here, check this out. 1905, a King James, and somebody gave this to me, and it's just a beautifully set up, well formatted old Bible. It's got the tabs on it for each book. It's got these loose leaves where pages fell out. This Bible right here fed somebody's soul for a very long time. This was the family Bible of some of our people, and you can go through and kind of see some of these notes that were put in there. Oh, I was wrong. Look at that. I thought 1905. First, it was 1896. Wow. So this is a real precious artifact of the Christian faith, I guess you would say. Yeah. I'm not sure why there's an advertisement from a newspaper in there. I guess they were using that as a bookmark. You got to be careful when you handle something like that. What else we got here? I've got a New King James, which is just a pretty cheap edition, but I really like the type font in this. It's very easy on the eyes, and New King James is a great translation. So there was a time in my life where this was my main Bible. I would spend more time in the New King James than any other for 5 or 6 years. So this is just a good, dependable go-to Bible. This is an NIV, the 1984 NIV, about as cheap as you can get, but I wanted one laying around so that I could do some quick reference, or sometimes I actually preach out of the NIV because they just nail the translation in a clear and yet still accurate way. So I've got a cheap one of these because I don't use it much, but there it is. And this one is interesting. The last one as far as straight translations go. This is also an NIV, but it is without, it's called the Story, and it's without any chapter or verse divisions. And so you just go through and you just read like you would be reading the original letters, or, here's the, this must be Isaiah. Yeah. There was Song of Solomon. Here you got the Gospels, And so it's just the NIV text, but you read through it as you would a novel. And what ends up happening here is, as you read through this, since you don't have any numbers to mark your progress, you don't realize how much ground you've covered. And so you'll sit down and read, and you think, oh, that was pleasant. And then wow, I went and read 7 chapters. Who knew? So that's a really cool resource to have. They also have this in the ESV, but it's a whole box set. And that's at home. I didn't want to bring that because, it was big and clunky. But they sold it for like $35 one day on Christian book distributors, and normally it's a $400 set. So I was like, yes, please, I'll take that. All right, so that leads me into study Bibles. Now, study Bibles are regular translations, but with study notes at the bottom. So check this out. Here in Jeremiah 20, you got the text of the Bible up here. Okay, so dual column, You got the text of the Bible, and then down here you've got study notes, explanatory notes. This is, maybe explaining difficult theological issues, or this one in particular is called the Net Bible, and it was put out by some guys at DTS, at Dallas Theological Seminary, where they focus a lot on the original languages. And in the Net Bible, what they did was they spent a lot of time in the study notes explaining, hey, here's why we chose that word, or the manuscript evidence leans more heavily towards this translation rather than that one, or whatever. So it's a really good resource for people who want to just take a look at, like, what were the decisions that the translators were making. Now, this one also, I got this because it was dirt cheap, but this is free online. You go to netbible. Whatever it is, and you can click through this and just highlight. They hyperlink all of these footnotes, and so you can use the Net Bible, just for free online. And I would recommend it. I do that a lot with my my sermon prep and so on. It's also a totally different translation. The study notes are one thing, but the translation is its own from the original languages. It's not meant to be the most readable thing in the world. It's meant to give you an accurate sense of every dictionary term in the original language as much as possible while still being readable. So when you read the Net Bible, you're going to be like, wow, I have never heard that verse quoted that way before. And it's okay. It's not designed to be your primary Bible that you read devotionally. It's still good for that, but you're not going to hear a lot of people quoting out of the Net Bible because it can get kind of clunky. They're going for, dictionary lexical accuracy rather than readability on that one. And it does a great job of that. So that's a good one to consult or to check in on periodically. All right, I'll put this one over here. Next, as far as study Bibles, I was excited when this came out recently. The Tony Evans Study Bible. Yes, advancing God's kingdom agenda. You can just hear him saying that in his voice. And look, the Tony Evans Study Bible is just awesome because Tony Evans is just awesome. So it is the text of the CSB, Christian Standard Bible, which is kind of the translation that the Southern Baptist Convention came out with a while ago because they got sick of paying, $20 million a year or whatever it was to Zondervan for the rights to the NIV. So they said, forget it, we'll make our own. That started out with the HCSB, the Holman Christian Standard Bible. And then they just revised this recently to be the CSB, Christian Standard Bible. Now, the cool thing about the Tony Evans Study Bible is, and I showed this to you guys on a different video at one point, if you scan this QR code with your phone, it'll take you to an introduction for the book of the Bible. So he's got 66 of these. It'll take you to a video intro where Tony Evans is explaining the overview of this book. And as one of the greatest preachers of all time, that's valuable information. So I recommend the Tony Evans Study Bible. He also came out with a full Bible commentary. I don't have that, but I'm sure it's good. I just didn't want to drop that much money on it. Here we've got the King James Version, Red Letter Edition, with a concordance, of course. Scofield Study System Bible. Check that out. Good old C.I. Scofield, man. Got all of his notes in here. This is the classic Bible translation and study Bible that kicked off really the popular version of the dispensational movement. So, just the whole way of handling Scripture, where you cross-reference it incessantly with itself. We love that. It's going to come from a very particular viewpoint as far as eschatology or end-time study, and that's a valuable thing to dip into, whether you agree or disagree with it. This is a standard Bible of Christian history. A lot of good progress has been done in the kingdom of God by people with this Bible in their hands. So, the Scofield, I recommend it. I don't agree with everything in it, but I recommend it. This here is a King James Version New Encyclopedic Reference Edition. This thing was published forever ago, and they don't put it out anymore. You can tell this was put out by Zondervan before the NIV was even published. So, it's got these little pictures in it. It's got some maps. Maps are always cool with these like transparency slide overlays they used to do. You guys remember that back in the day? So here's a a map of Europe, and then you get Paul's third missionary journey. You get his fourth missionary journey, and you can just overlay those things. So, and then a good dictionary or concordance in the back, dictionary of Bible terms that are important. Some good study materials on this one. So, one of the original study Bibles, I guess you could say. Here's a study Bible that I find to be very entertaining. This is the Greek and Hebrew Keyword Study Bible. NASB, but it's the 1977 NASB. Okay, normally I'm reading out of the 1995. The 1977 is interesting. That was the first round of the New American Standard. So you see all of these, verses, which are essentially, just regular NASB verses. But anytime it's a prayer, then it'll slip into the King James. So if you look at like John 17. Father, the hour has come. Glorify thy Son, that the Son may glorify thee. And we won't talk like that in the rest of the translation, but since it's a prayer, they'll keep it in the King James. Also, the Psalms, they kept in the King James, or King James-ish. They kind of wrote it in the King's English. Be gracious to us, O God, and bless us, and cause his face to shine upon us, that thy way may be known on all the earth, thy salvation among all nations. Let the peoples praise thee, O God. And then, you get out of that, and it's just NASB text. The word which came to Jeremiah from the Lord in the days of Jehoiakim, son of, whatever. Go to the house of the Rechabites. Why did I pick this passage to start reading? And say to them, bring it, so it's just a normal NASB text. In the 95 edition, they updated that and they got rid of the fancy language in the prayers and the Psalms. But the other cool thing about the the Hebrew-Greek Keyword Study Bible here is that what it'll do is it'll underline these words. And so if you see like here, for example, as soon as this lightens up, you see here, this is underlined and there's a little number next to it, which I don't know if you can see that. It's 5274. So then what you'll do is you'll go back here into the back and you'll look up 5274 in the Greek version, the Greek lexicon that's back here, and it'll give you a definition of the word. Oh, no, I went past it. Anyway, so you can go back here into this. It's got like a Greek and Hebrew lexicon in the back, and you can look up these key words that are underlined for you. This is a really good one if you don't have Blue Letter Bible with you all the time, and you just want to do some study in a hard copy. I really like this resource. I've taken that on the mission field with me before too. It's been helpful. Next, you've got the ever dependable, the usually dependable, ever weighty NIV Study Bible. I say usually because this is the 2011 version of the NIV, and it's got those kind of problem passages where they went a little too far trying to be gender inclusive or whatever. So, the controversy is a real thing, but I don't want to chuck the whole translation because largely speaking, it is an excellent translation. So, anyway, I'm an NIV fan, but sometimes you got to punch your brother in the side of the head, which occasionally we do with the NIV. Still a good translation, and I've gotten this Bible for people because it's full color introductions, really good information that they choose in these introductions. So by the time you read an intro in this book, then you've got a pretty good handle of the skeleton of this book. It's got all sorts of stuff in the back as far as dictionaries and concordances and index notes and Bible characters and references and things like that. Got your cross references in the center column. Gotta love that because we love our cross references. This is the intro to the book of Psalms. You can see this is, pretty expansive. So, yeah, just a great all-around resource. If you're a new believer or, you've never really looked deeply into the Bible, but you want to do some serious study, the NIV Study Bible is a good place to start there. Let's see here. 2 more study Bibles for you. This is the Care and Counsel Bible. The text is the New King James, and this is put out by, Thomas Nelson Publishers. But this is basically put out for people that are involved in a lot of counseling and stuff. So it's a study Bible where the study notes are going to be taken from issues in the text that can intersect with common human issues. So here we have a distressing spirit troubles Saul. Okay, 1 Samuel 16. And then down here, hey, have you ever had a distressing spirit trouble you? Well, here's what's going on in this text, and here's how it applies. They seem to pick up, good subjects to expound upon, and they were very selective. So here, David, the anxieties of a king from Psalm 42. That's helpful stuff. In Luke chapter 2, I remember it had an aside on the difficulties of motherhood when Jesus was born and all this sort of stuff. So maybe that was Luke 1. Anyway, the Counsel Bible, pretty cool resource. And I don't know what kind of cover this is, but it is a very soft, enjoyable cover to hold. Lastly, the Grand Poobah, the papa of them all. This is the boss, the big cheese. This is the ESV Study Bible. If you can have only one study Bible, get you an ESV Study Bible. I heart this thing. You guys have heard me talk about it, and I'm not backing off of this. I love this Bible. The study notes are excellent. They take up the right issues. It's good conservative explanation of the text. Excellent cross references in there, and all of the articles in the back. You got an article here on biblical ethics. You've got an article over here on an overview of biblical doctrine. You've got an introduction to the Septuagint, which I'll introduce you guys to here shortly. History of the salvation in the Old Testament. It just traces you through the theme in a biblical theological sense. I love me some ESV Study Bible. Thank you, Crossway. Good work. All right. So that's the study Bibles. What's next here? Next we've got kind of Bible spin-offs, I guess. I'm not really sure exactly what to call these. So we've got here the things that we give away on Sundays. Just the Gospel of John. That's it. Really small. Gospel of John. Take that. This is the Life Book, which is pretty much the text of one of the Gospels with little notes on it that are designed to be explanatory. Those things that look handwritten, those are actually part of the publication, right? So it's just kind of a good little devotional. Hey, I need to meet Jesus. What does the gospel have to say to actual humans? Well, here you go. So it's a decent book. It's designed for youth, designed for kind of kids to study through or whatever. And look, I wouldn't base your whole spiritual development on it, but not a bad resource there. This here is an English translation of the Septuagint. So the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament that the apostles would have been very familiar with. That's what a lot of the rabbis were using at the time that Jesus was around, and so on. Jesus himself shows plenty of familiarity with the Septuagint. So, this was kind of the authoritative Bible for Greek-speaking Jews in New Testament times, and slightly before that too. This includes the Apocrypha because the Septuagint was translated with the Apocrypha in it, because that was, just typical Jewish writings. They all had that. So this is an English translation of the Septuagint. It's a really good one, really helpful. A lot of times if you see the New Testament authors quoting an Old Testament passage, you go back into the Old Testament, you're like, wait a second, that's different wording. What's going on? And it's because they're quoting the Septuagint. So you go to this, and you find the quote much more closely linked. So there you go. I love me some Septuagint study. This one here is just a hint at some other stuff that's available. Kids' Bibles. This isn't really a Bible. I kind of wish they would come up with a different name for it. But, the Action Bible, and it puts the biggest stories in the Bible in comic book form. So, there's Samson wrestling a lion and this and that. Over here you get, John the Baptist. Look at John the Baptist here. One of my kids had the Action Bible and kind of scared him, actually, because the pictures were kind of graphic, I guess. I mean, not in a rated R sense, but just look at that, man. That dude's scary. So anyway, it's a pretty good resource, and there's all kinds of this stuff out there. I recommend the Action Bible if you've got kids that are readers. It should not be a substitute for actual Bible reading, but it's a fun way to engage the kids in Bible stuff. So there you go. I'm running out of space to put stuff over here. This right here, do I even want to show you guys this one? Sure, why not? This is what we call the Sefer, Et Sefer, which is just Hebrew for the book, and it's a big honking mamma jamma. Look at that thing. Can't even get it. Okay, it's big. And it comes from a guy that I know very well that got into the Hebrew roots movement pretty thoroughly, and so they did a republication of the scriptures in English, but with maintaining all of the Hebrew names and so on. So here for Jeremiah, you have Yirmeyahu, right? All of the book titles. Proverbs is Mishlei. And the video cut out on that last one while we were going through Et Sefer, which is okay. Basically, to finish up on that, I mean, look, he included the Apocrypha in there, so we would have theological differences to the hilt on whether that should be included or not. There's also other stuff like, the Book of Acts. Look at this. Acts of the Apostles, right? How many chapters are in the Book of Acts? 28, right? Well, in this one, there's a 29th chapter, because the claim is that there was a 29th chapter of Acts that dropped off or something. So, anyway, there's a lot for me and this guy to debate sitting around a table with a cup of coffee in our hands. But, it's cool because a lot of that intertestamental stuff, the Apocrypha and so on, that's really good reading. Even though it's not, divinely inspired scripture, you go and read the Maccabees, you go and read Judith, Tobit and things like that. That's good stuff. So anyway, it's nice to have it there in one volume. But since it was so closely tied to the original Hebrew pronunciations of stuff, then they put out a lexicon also so that you could kind of look up words and be like, I have no idea what that is. So here, it's like, there you go. I mean, Ramses. Well, there it is in Hebrew, and here's who he was in the Bible and that kind of thing. So they put out a lexicon with it because it can be almost unreadable at times if you're not willing to put in that study. So there's that, the Et Sefer. All right, and that brings us to Bibles in the original languages. I was mentioning the Septuagint. So check this out. Here is the Septuagint with the Apocrypha, because the original Septuagint translation project was including the Apocrypha and all the traditional Jewish writings. So the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. So Jesus was familiar with it. The apostles quoted it sometimes, and so you'll read the apostles quote an Old Testament passage in the New Testament, and then you go back and read it in the Old Testament. You're like, wait a second, that's not the same wording. Well, a lot of times it's because they were quoting the Septuagint, which was the Greek translation of it, and that comes across to English a little bit differently than the Hebrew does, and that's okay. So here you got the Greek, and then you got the English, and that's really helpful for anybody that wants to get into Septuagint studies. I recommend this version by Holman, put out by Brenton. All right. Greek English Septuagint. Here is a Greek English Bible, but it's interesting because what you got here is the Greek in the middle. That's just the Greek text, the UBS 4 or whatever they're using. And then you got NIV on this side and NRSV on this side. So you can see two different conservative translation options from one word. So that's pretty cool, a cool resource to have there. And I think the guy that I got this from was a Charles Spurgeon fan, because there was apparently a cigar burn on this book. Mad respect. Okay, we've got here an interlinear. You guys are familiar with interlinears. You got the Greek and then the English, just word-for-word translation underneath it. So if you just take that from Greek straight into English and keep the words in the same order, it doesn't make a ton of sense, right? So Acts 7:25. Now he was thinking to understand the brothers of him, that God by the hand of him is giving salvation to them, but they did not understand. That's a strange way to talk. So what they do is they smooth it out over here, and bam, you got the NRSV text on the side. So that's good for anybody who's got a familiarity with Greek, but not enough to read it without the English. Interlinears are a great tool. That one was given to me. This one I actually purchased because it was worth it. This is the same thing, but it's the ESV text, and it's just like that typeface is just super easy on the eyes. You got the ESV over here instead of the NRSV, and it's nice and big, because when you're bouncing back and forth between languages, that can be hard just visually. So they set that up really well. I appreciate these guys a lot for doing this, and you'll see the Hebrew counterpart to that, pretty soon. So let's see here. I got another. This is just an English translation of the Septuagint without. Did I already show you guys that one? I don't remember. Without any Greek in it at all. It's just boom, English Septuagint. So there you go. With Apocrypha. That gets us into this guy. A Reader's Hebrew and Greek Bible, put out by Zondervan. And this one's cool because what you do is you open up to the front of it, and boom, you've got yourself a Greek New Testament. Now, why would there be a Greek New Testament in the front of the Bible? Because the New Testament comes at the end of the Bible. Yeah, but if you go to the end of this Bible, you open it backwards, you wind up at the Hebrew Old Testament. Because Hebrew reads, by our standards, backwards, right? So this is kind of a trippy little thing to get your hands around at first. But really helpful to have the full Bible in its original languages with you without having to tote along all of these, interlinears and stuff, because paper is heavy. So depending on how well you know your Greek and Hebrew, this can be a great, great tool. I do wish that they had put it out with a nicer cover, because this cover is pretty cheap and chintzy, and it's not going to last very long. So if I found a leather-bound version of that, I would buy it, because it's going to last me the rest of my life if I can find it. So, yeah, okay, so here's the Hebrew version of that Greek interlinear from ESV that I showed you. So we'll just, Now, Hebrew interlinears are interesting because, Hebrew, again, by our standards, goes backwards, right? So in Psalm 141, right? Psalm of David, Yahweh, I call you, hurry to me, give ear, voice of me, when to call me to you, let her be established, right? So it's that really clunky kind of straight across word for word translation. They smooth it out over here with the ESV text, but it's tricky because you have to read it right to left, the way that Hebrew is read, not the way that English is read. So that can be, a little bit of mental gymnastics if you're not geared up for that going into it. This one drives me crazy. All right, I'm not happy about this. This is this tiny little, look how thin it is. It's a little guy. This is a Hebrew New Testament, and I was so excited to see it because I'm like, oh yeah, that's fun. You can, just read the New Testament in Hebrew. But the problem with this is it's a terrible translation, and I was like, yo, Bible Society, what's up, man? I expected better out of you guys. But I haven't spent any time reading this ever since I was, going through it, and I'm just like, this is awful. Like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. So anyway, I don't know who rushed this to print, but apparently they should have taken a little more time on that, which is why I purchased this guy. This is kind of fun. It's got like this zipper pouch to it. It's darn near waterproof, and it's small, so it's great for traveling or taking on the mission field or whatever. But this is a Hebrew Bible, Old Testament and New Testament in Hebrew, right? So you would expect the New Testament to be in Greek. Here they translated it into Hebrew. So that's just kind of a fun little deal, right? Good to have. And that's a much better translation. This one was put out by somebody. I don't know who. Anyway, it's good. I appreciated it. Here we got an English or a Hebrew Bible. This is just the old standard Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, a German publication that is the standard Masoretic text of the Hebrew Old Testament. And this is just a paperback edition that I can kind of beat up and flip around a little bit. They do sell this with leather binding, but I was like, if I get this in leather, I'm just going to be spending a bunch of money on something that is not going to last very long. So, because you need something that you can sort of flop around and wrinkle up and throw in a bag somewhere. So anyway, I didn't spend a bunch of money on that because that's important to have and to use handily. Okay, this one's fun. I like this one a lot. Not because I can read it, but what this is the Torah, just the law of Moses, in Paleo Hebrew. All right, what is Paleo Hebrew? Well, you guys know the what Hebrew looks like, right? It looks like this. But that script is actually, this alphabet here and stuff, that's actually an Aramaic script that came to prominence after the Babylonian captivity, the time of Daniel and Ezekiel and these guys. So the earliest Bible writers were not writing in a script that looked like this. This is traditional Hebrew. It's not the first form of Hebrew. Paleo Hebrew looks like this, okay? And so you can go into, say, for example, the Ten Commandments, which I'm not really good at reading this yet, so I'm not going to waste your time finding it. But, you can go into the Ten Commandments and say, wow, that's probably about what it looked like when Moses wrote it, with those characters. Now, here they help the reader a little bit. They do these things where they put the dots between the words and, so on. But if you know anything about Hebrew, you can see this is pretty much the same thing with a different alphabet, right? It's got you got your three-letter root words and just sometimes four-letter root words, or on segolate nouns, you'd get two-letter root words, that kind of thing. No vowels, so if you can, make heads or tails of Hebrew with no vowels, all you got to do is spend a couple hours learning this alphabet, and then it's plug and play from there. It's, whatever you would normally read in this script, you just learn a different style of lettering, and boom, you're off and reading Paleo Hebrew, slowly, albeit, but you're you're reading it. So this is just a lot of fun. I actually, when I get a little bit of time, which is to say probably the year 2032. I'm just going to spend a little time, getting better at reading the Paleo Hebrew. So that's a fun side project that's on the back burner for now. Another one is the Aramaic English New Testament. Now, why is this a thing? Why is it important to put it in Aramaic? Well, the answer is it's not important at all, but it's fun because the original conversations that happened between Jesus and the disciples, they were speaking in Aramaic. They weren't speaking Greek. The New Testament was written in Greek so that so that it could be distributed throughout the whole known world because they were all Greek speakers. But they were speaking in Aramaic. So if you look at like the Sermon on the Mound, for example, it was originally delivered in Aramaic. So here you go with like Matthew 5, and you can just go and come on, Matthew 5. It takes forever to turn somewhere here. Well, so like here's Matthew 6, right? You get Matthew chapter 6, you get the Lord's Prayer in there. Well, you can read that, and that's probably something like what the Lord's Prayer originally sounded like coming out of the mouth of Jesus. Now, what they did was they took the Greek text and translated it back into Aramaic. So this is not exactly what he said. It's a guess. There's nothing authoritative about it. This doesn't get you like, one link closer to what Jesus actually said. But it's a fun thing to speculate on, It's a fun thing to just read. And as you can see, if you don't know anything about Aramaic, it looks exactly like Hebrew because it's the same script, same vowel patterns, and a lot of the same grammar. So if you're up to speed on biblical Hebrew, you can read through the Aramaic and probably get 50% of it. And since you got the English translation right here, you can make heads or tails of it. So there's nothing important about this, but there's definitely a lot about it that is fun to just kind of mess around with, right? So anyway, that's a fun little, if you got a few extra minutes and not up for starting a new project yet, you just pick up the Aramaic New Testament and go to town. All right, what are the languages we got here? We got French. I got this little thing to give away in Ivory Coast to somebody if I was sharing the gospel with them and they didn't have a Bible. I could give this away to them. I ended up not doing that because this is a translation called Second 21, which is kind of like the King James, and they just had much more usable translations over there. So I came back home with this guy. But this is, for when you're learning, this is a dual-column bilingual Bible. So this is French over here and English over here, and that's really helpful for just learning a language, right? You just read familiar passages in French, and then when you don't know what it says, you bounce over to the English and you let it help you. This is also really good if you're preaching in the mission field in a place where you've got some familiarity with the language, because you can read it in the target language. You could read it in French, but then find all of your visual markers over here in English because you'll recognize them a lot faster since you're familiar with the language. So a bilingual Bible, if you're going to be learning a language or planting a church or doing mission work or evangelizing or whatever in a target language, get yourself a bilingual Bible. That one was French because we've done a lot of mission work in West Africa, right? This one is Spanish, same thing. New American Standard over here, and then the Biblia de las Americas over here. Okay, so the Spanish version of the NASB. Let it lighten up there. There you go. Just a dual column bilingual Bible. That one's in Spanish. Got an old Spanish Bible here that's kind of their version of the King James. I don't know how I came across that one, but there you go. Got a giveaway Bible here. I keep this one in my truck for if I'm sharing the gospel with somebody and they need a Bible but their native language is Spanish. I'll give them a Bible in their heart language so that they can, read it. And I'll mark a passage out for them, maybe in John or something. So that's just a giveaway paperback Spanish Bible. And this here is the same thing, dual column bilingual Bible, except in the ESV. So I ended up with this somehow, and I figured that's going to be useful. So that's just a cheap little hardback, almost a pew Bible, really. All right, last three. What do we got here? This one. All these three. You're going to be like, can you actually read these? And the answer is no. This is a Syriac Bible, which is a dialect of Aramaic. Now, it looks like Arabic, but it's not. It's Aramaic. So if you look at this, what this is, it's Syriac. So if you are up to speed on your biblical Hebrew, then Aramaic comes super easy. And if you learn your Aramaic well, then Syriac is just a dialect of Aramaic with a different script. So ideally, in a couple of years, when I've made a little more progress on my Aramaic, I'll be able to just crack open a Syriac Bible and learn a couple of the distinctives of this dialect and then read along with this. So this is the whole Bible in Syriac. Now, why is this something that I even want to waste any time on, because a lot of the early church fathers were Syriac speakers. And like the Syriac church is very, very important historically speaking. And so a lot of these guys have written things that haven't even been translated into English yet. So, hopefully, if I get decent with the Syriac, then we can read in that language and then read the early church fathers that were writing in Syriac. And this is stuff that no English reader has ever really spent any time reading. So that's kind of an exciting prospect to that there are still, after 2,000 years, treasures to dig up that have not been unearthed yet. We've got the manuscripts, we just haven't translated them. So anyway, that's kind of another back burner side project, is just kind of get going on Syriac. But I figure you go from Hebrew into Aramaic into Syriac, and if I can, that's probably the path of least resistance for all that. This is the Concombe Bible from Ghana, and this was the last mission trip that I did a couple months ago, where this is what they were reading out of. So it's very similar to the English script. It's based on English, but you've just got some different letters here. So my translator was teaching me how to read Concombe. It's very phonetic, very easy to read. I don't know what any of it means, but I could pronounce it for you, so that's fun. So anyway, this is the Wycliffe translation of the Bible into Concombe. Lastly, a language I promise you I am never going to learn how to read, because it's one of the hardest languages for English speakers to learn. And there's really no benefit for me to do this. But the first mission trip I ever took was to the Republic of Georgia. So not the state of Georgia, but they call it Sakartvelo. It's an old Soviet bloc country. And this is a Bible in Georgian. Just a beautiful sounding language, a beautiful looking language. And I've really got a lot of admiration for this language in itself. Just, when we were operating around there, just hearing it. Gorgeous and very musical too. Very easy to write songs in Georgian. But yeah, it's a tough one. So it's probably not something I'm going to spend a lot of time learning, because the cost to benefit ratio does not work out in my favor. All right, guys, that's it as far as hard copies of the Bible that I've got. The lesson to learn from this, as always, is that you don't need all of this stuff. These are just the tools of the trade for a pastor, and I wind up with these things various ways. So the best Bible for you is the one that's in your hands. All right, make sure you got yourself a decent standard translation. You'll have your preferences. I've got mine. But whatever Bible you got, read it.